Good morning, afternoon, evening. Welcome to MSP Community Live. I'm Matt Topper, and I'm here. That means Ray is obviously not here since we are cursed to never be available at the same time for anything. But we have Josh here. So, Josh, how's it going? And thank you for filling in again.
Yeah, absolutely, my pleasure. So I'm here, which means Kyle wasn't able to be here. So this is kind of the go through the ranks. But your virtual background inspired me to try mine out. But clearly, I need some sort of green screen because it's got a little weird effect. But I'm trying to liven it up a little bit with one of my favorite disc golf courses in the area. So that's good. Springtime, it's time to get outside, right?
It is nice. It is springtime. I'm concerned that this virtual background is going to get me to start playing Minecraft, which I've never actually done or know anything about, other than that's where this photo is from. And from what I've been told, that can be a very dangerous time suck road to go down.
I mean, my kids really like it. I played it for a little bit, but definitely not into it as much as my kids. And it's really funny because they're younger, right? So they come up and they're like, "How do I do this? I need to do this." And I'm like, "You honestly know more about this game than I do. So, have at it, man. Look it up on YouTube."
There you go. Well, I'm trying not to get sidetracked. I'm mostly watching baseball, and finally, I don't know if anyone watching is from upstate New York or the Great Lakes area. It's basically gray for 6 months out of the year around here, and I saw this big yellow thing in the sky yesterday. So I'm super excited about that. Going to have a nice weekend and not do any work stuff. So looking forward to that. So we have, I think, four, five, a few stories queued up. Let's just get right into it. Okay, obviously I should have gone full screen mode. Can you read that, Josh, while I fix my window size?
Yeah, absolutely. So our first story here is just a simple title. It's called stress, and it's something that we deal with. I wouldn't say not only in the MSP world, but you can deal with this in any job, really. The poster goes on to say we have to know a lot and touch a lot of systems in our line of work. The stakes are high, the stress is intense. I feel like it's so stressed about things at work that I can't clear out my head of work-related things when I'm not there. What do you guys do when you feel like tapping out? I've tried meditating, it helps, but it feels like a distraction.
Ooh, okay. So he's talking about. It's interesting. I almost hear two things here. There's the usual stress that MSP work and consulting work leads to just from being overloaded with client requests and calling people back. But I wonder if this is referring to like the stress of trying to keep up with technology changing.
It
Which is
can be.
worse?
Yeah. I would say I I I like the technology changing because what I like about this industry is you always have something new to learn and no one knows everything. Right? You kind of have to be a jack of all trades versus being specialized on one particular thing. And certainly you can have specializations like myself specialize in cybersecurity or Microsoft 365, but as far as an MSP in general, you still have to be kind of a jack of all trades. So it
You
can get
do.
pretty stressful to keep up with things and learn the new things. But at the same time, you could also look at that as an opportunity for continual improvement and continue learning. On the other side, depending on the MSP you're in, if you're needing to get 9 billable hours in a 8 hour day, constantly doing tickets, that can be extremely stressful. My advice to you is let me take off this virtual background here and you get one of these things right here. Physical exercise is my go-to, right? Um, I'm fortunate enough to have an area where I have a nice treadmill because I have crappy weather most of the time here. But one of my favorite things was I would meal prep my lunches when I worked in the office, and I would take my lunch break and I would go for a run or a walk around the 45, 50 minutes, and then come back and nuke my lunch and eat my lunch at my desk while I was working. Getting out of the office, putting on a podcast, music, putting on MSP Community Live or some YouTube show,
Subtle.
and then completely disconnecting with work. Like this is like it's a break in the middle of the day. I need to completely refocus. And sometimes on there you think of something, right? You're trying to think of how to solve the problem, or you're thinking about a ticket inevitably and you're like, "Oh, like I can try that," right? You're getting the wheels moving and you're standing up, getting physical exercise. And I think it's magic. It's not easy to do, but there's some magic behind it.
So I'll disagree with one point, and that is, man, I hate running on the treadmill. Like, treadmill is the real name of the device for me. Now, outside running, total different story. A huge proponent of that. Only kidding, of course. It's miserable out here, and I think I've just embraced the suck in terms of running in the snow and blizzard and things. Um, but having that kind of disconnect, having that clearing your head moment, that's the key to avoiding burnout. Then I don't mind admitting that I got to serious burnout for a while. I was basically working 24 hours a day. You know, it was the kind of deal where you did all of the meetings from 8 to 5 and then went home and did all the real work from 5 until whenever. And that was my life for a few years. And that was really tough. And it's not a choice you consciously make. You just start to feel this obligation to get everything done and satisfy all your requests. And all of a sudden, you're not really doing anything outside of work. And I implore anyone listening to try and head that off early, because for me at least, it ultimately was a big contributor in my leaving the MSP side completely and going to vendor side. I simply just couldn't take that level of commitment and time anymore. Um, so running or any kind of physical, and it doesn't have to be physical activity. I know, Josh, you and I like working out and running and things, but anything that can get you into that disconnected, clearing your head state. You know, you mentioned podcasts. Even if you just like turn off and veg out on the couch in front of a TV show, or heck, I've been at events, and after I'm done talking with everyone, I'll go up and like sit on the bed and stare at the ceiling for a while and try and decompress. Like
My
anything you can do.
One of my old coworkers at my last job, he had like I think it's the Xbox Game Pass or something. He just like brought a controller, and for his lunch break he popped in headphones and literally played a game on his phone. Like to
Yeah.
your point, just anything to decompress. I mean, sometimes even working, like working at home, if I don't want to do physical exercise, I will go on the couch and I will mindlessly scroll Instagram reels for a half hour, just something to decompress. And it sounds like, and I've been there. Like sometimes you're not in the position where you get an hour lunch break. I definitely don't get an hour lunch break every day as much as I would like to, but I also came from the restaurant world. I was a general manager of a restaurant. I had opened 3 restaurants. I was working 90 to 100-hour weeks, and sometimes you don't have time for yourself. And I have a wife and 2 kids at that time. Now 3 at this time. And is in the restaurant world.
Mhm.
A lot of stress at my previous MSP led to. I mean, not to get. We'll save this for a wins and losses episode, but I gained quite a bit of weight that I had lost back due to stress from a job. So if it becomes that stressful, I mean, at some point, then you have to do what's best for yourself. And maybe that is find another MSP or find a different line of work. But I really like the MSP world. I really like what I do. And I'm fortunate enough to have an MSP that has a great work life balance. But ultimately, you're responsible for you, right? Like you got to
Nailed
take
it.
care of number
Yeah.
one. So whatever your preferred method is, vegging out, I prefer physical activity if I can, like starting the day with some exercise, clearing the hair, just go for a walk. It's magic, right? So I think that would be my answer, is find what your preferred method of disconnecting is, and try to get it in, even if it's a half hour, full hour, whatever you can do.
Yeah. I think what we're saying to sum up is just proactively get ahead of this, right? IT is something of an inherently stressful field, or it can be, especially trying to keep up. So think about what it is for you that lets you disconnect. and do that and put some real effort into prioritizing that. Like hard schedule that on the calendar. Like your run happens at 5, and you that's just as valuable or just as important and just as immovable as any other meeting or any other calendar invite. Now you don't actually have to put it on your calendar, and the reality is you'll skip it occasionally, but get into that mindset of your personal time, your recharge time is equally important as any other scheduled event, and treat it that way. Okay, I think we can move on. We can talk about stress forever otherwise. So this was an interesting thread. There's a reason I wanted to talk about this, and I'm sure you can guess what that reason is. Technician on-site client use tools for troubleshooting. Don't want to steal anyone's process. Okay, first of all, steal other people's processes if they're good, especially. Like that's number one. You do want to steal anyone's process. Finding myself more ejected from the tech troubleshooting world of basic things. Yep, that happens to basically all of us as we move on. Currently, I'm performing auditing of the tools we use on client computers and networks to troubleshoot, realizing that we're probably behind the times and need to improve. Yes, I would agree with that. So he's listed some tools: Advanced IP Scanner, Nmap, DBS Bench. Actually, is that DNS Bench supposed to be? I don't know what DBS Bench is. And Reg Scanner. Free utility tools. Okay. I go to tech conferences. People are still using Hirons. Didn't even know that was still around.
It is. It works now with Windows 11. I've heard.
So I'm sure you can guess, Josh, what I'm going to say about this.
Yeah, you have a new product that you're developing that takes the place of all of these, and you're about to sell us on it, right?
Yeah, like that XKCD with there were 15 standards, now there's 16 standards. That's
Yeah.
what. No, I can't believe we're still doing this in whatever year it is, 2024. Alden, is this person me? Alden, you would say the same thing I'm about to, and that is, why are we still doing this? Right? The endpoint, the desktop, is completely disposable at this point. I can't tell you the last time I went in and started messing around with reg cleaners or temp file fixes or any of this kind of stuff, instead of just saying the thing's on autopilot, wipe and refresh. Like, do you feel that way, Josh?
Yeah, I use the phrase servers are pets, endpoints are cattle.
Yes,
You
DevOps
just
mindset.
gotta you gotta take them out back and take care of them. Unfortunately, sometimes when they stop working, I think it's a balance, right? Because the people, especially starting out, they get into this industry because they like tinkering with these things, and it is fun to dive into a problem and to get deep into the registry and throw up what is it, Wireshark, and look at all of the different broadcasts and try to fix this really one random issue. But then you have to look at, well, how much time did that just cost you, right? Regardless if it's billable time or if it's on a managed service contract, how much tech time does it take to do that? How much downtime do the client have? Because what is the lost potential that they have? If their person bills at $300 an hour or whatever it might be, and it takes you 4 hours to dig through this, when you could just, hey, we're going to look at it for 30 minutes, hard stop, we can't figure it out, we're going to just wipe it, right? And that's how it needs to be. And I think as you mature and as you get more experience, you realize more and more that that's the answer.
Yeah, agreed. And I think you brought up a good point in that there is some reasonable amount of time to whack at a problem before you say, hey, let's call it and reformat. It's not as if the first sign of trouble, you autopilot reset the machine. Maybe you do, depending on what machine it is. If it's the conference room machine, maybe. But it takes some. Well, we were just talking about how you and I, and maybe you still are. I am not necessarily the world's best tech anymore because my role has changed. And as you start to move up and change and get into different roles within your organization, you mature along with that, and your processes do too. When I first started, yes, I would have spent hours trying to find what specific setting broke something, and I would have thought that that was a very good and useful thing to do. But then your perspective starts to change, and you think about what you just said, Josh. Is the client down? Am I messing up the overall profitability of this client by spending 6 hours on a problem that really should take two? And it represents a shift in thinking beyond just a I'm here to solve a problem to I'm here to be an IT department. I'm here to provide support to the overall success of this business, not just throw me the hardest problem you can possibly find and I'll fix it. That's good and useful when it's some big problem like on a server or on a line of business application that you can't just hit reset on. But on this kind of stuff, at least my opinion is one, it forces you to have your setup procedures thought out and well documented and repeatable. And two, it just doesn't make sense from a business standpoint to be spending tons and tons of time on this. And eventually, and I'll let you talk in a second. I know I'm kind of monologuing here. You get to the point where you've done this enough that you can recognize when maybe it is worth spending time going on this. Maybe it's a very complex PC to reset up or has, accountants are really bad at this. They have like 12 versions of QuickBooks installed and all sorts of tax software and thing. You know, it takes a really long time to set up that machine again. Maybe then it's worth getting into something like that, and it just helps you make that judgment call. Okay,
Yep.
I took over the floor for like 5 minutes.
No,
I'll let you go
all good.
again.
I mean, looking at it too, like I haven't been on in the field for quite some time. It's been a while since I've been a field tech, and sometimes, I mean, advanced IP scanners still use that one. Some of these tools thinking, you do need to uh, difference between troubleshooting a network and troubleshooting an endpoint, right? So some of these tools specifically calling out might be needed. But I think again, going back to the other side of it is I'm going to play devil's advocate. Is if you have a person who doesn't know how to dive in and have that troubleshooting mindset and know where to go, and they just know, well, we just rewipe it. Like there's something to be said for the ability and the technical ability to be able to dive in and research the issue and know what to look and kind of have that intimate knowledge of the system. But also, to your point, that's important to have on the servers and the PBAs and not so much on the endpoints anymore. Right? I'm in a cool position right now where I can be like very high level and do a lot of business meetings, cybersecurity road mapping, and things like that. But also, I can get super deep and technical with our solutions and the Microsoft side of things with security. So sometimes I'm doing the like, hey, let's look at high level business operations, and then now I'm diving into why this Intune thing is not compliant. And it's a trade off. Like I think I don't know how to word this, but yeah, the more experience you get, the more you realize where like you need to have a repeatable process that is just,
Yeah.
hey, we spend 30 minutes on it and we're wiping it, or instead of diving into those things as well. And then to Alden's point, it could be a maturity thing, right? If your MSP doesn't have autopilot, if you don't have the ability to just wipe and reload, then what are you supposed to do? Well, learn it.
Right, which doesn't help you in the moment though. Let's
Yeah.
admit that. So let me ask you this: do you think that we will see a lack of deep troubleshooting skills in the future? And what I mean by that is many of us who are good at troubleshooting holistic environments or servers or deep intricate problems got good at that by troubleshooting desktops early in our career.
I
Do you think
100%
that'll be a
think that.
problem?
I think it already is becoming a little bit of one, right? I mean, look at Windows 11. They purposely try to hide the control panel from you. Like, you have to go out of your way to get to the deep settings of your computer, trying to make
Right.
things easier. And I think our friend Kevin from OIT is actually doing a talk on this at MSP GeekCon, to plug that a little bit, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in meeting him and talking with him at Right of Boom, he was kind of saying that too, is you get the guys who come up in like the 90s. I was a little later, kind of early 2000s, but those tech people that dove in and like knew the registry and how to make these things work are on a completely different level. Not saying that they're better or worse, but they have a different mindset with how they approach things. And even and Ray, if he's listening, I mean, he's, I would say, probably sort of the old guard. You probably deep dove knows a lot about this particular thing, but things are changing. Or one of my bosses, my old MSP, I think he knows everything there is to know about Active Directory inside and out. Absolutely knows everything about it. But then it came to Entra ID and the Microsoft 365 thing, and there was definitely that kind of knowledge gap there, and that's where I came in and kind of explained that. So I said old guard. I didn't say Ray was old. uh, but yeah, and I think it's just, as it's evolving, technology is becoming a little bit easier and a little bit like you're maybe a society as a whole, you don't fix things anymore, you dispose of them and buy a new one. That's how it is, right? Let's take computers out, like washers and dryers. Do you call a repair guy, or do you just buy another washer or dryer? Because it's going to cost $300 for the repair or $600 to buy a new one, right? So
Yeah.
again, looking at the labor, it's going to cost $600 in labor to deep dive and to troubleshoot this, or it's going to cost 200 to just wipe it, or whatever that might be. So again, I think we're already getting to that point. Um, but you still have to know troubleshooting. It just maybe not have to be as deep as it once was.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this ends up, or if we have a different generation of techs who just never had to learn that, or if the technology changes such that that type of troubleshooting is less frequently needed. Um, TBD, but yes, Kevin is talking about that at his MSP GeekCon. I'm talking about something similar, not exactly the same, but him and I synced up to make sure we weren't overlapping, and it's a real issue. And I think you're right that as some of the older techs, I don't know if I'm ready to call myself old guard or older tech yet, but as some of us either leave the industry or take positions that aren't directly hands-on tech anymore, I think we'll see that. I think we'll see a generation of techs who has to learn differently or learn how to do things differently, and may not have had that. All of us, like when we were kids, were coding on basic and things, right?
Yeah.
that
I
that,
mean,
that doesn't exist anymore.
I'll throw myself out there. Look at gaming PCs. I have one. I built one. Building a PC is easy. It's like the
Yeah.
it's like the game where you put the shapes in the holes, right? There's only one place these things can go. But when things go wrong, or if you try to troubleshoot it, like, man, I don't know. I can dive into it, but it's more of an annoyance. Like, I don't know what I'm doing as far as like heavy troubleshooting on that, and I would often defer to like my coworker who was much younger, also heavy like building gaming PCs, and I would just be like, okay, I could dive in and figure this out, but I just don't want to anymore. Like, I'm,
Yep.
crotchety old man. Like, I don't have time for this shit. Like, Mason, help me out
It's so
here. Like, what do I
true.
do? Uh,
Like when I was in school, I was one of those guys that had a rack of Cisco gear in my dorm room because I just thought it was fun. And now I have like regular old home Wi-Fi router because
and
I just don't. I'm not interested in dealing with that anymore at my
I'm
house.
I'm so tempted to do it. Right now I'm running a pfSense firewall. I have a Ruckus access point for enterprise Wi-Fi, and I'm to the point where I'm like, man, I just give me the MSP stuff, or the home user like router stuff. Like, if my stuff goes down, I don't want to troubleshoot it. I just want it to work. It's
Yeah.
nice to have all of it, but like, do I really need it? Like, I don't spend the time on it. So yeah, I think, if man, maybe we are getting old. Might be time to admit it.
Damn.
Ugh.
All right, well, now we definitely have to move on because I'm considering my own age. I'm in the idea that MSP is a BS job. Okay, well, this is not the first time I've heard sentiment like this, certainly. Maybe the first time I saw a whole thread dedicated to it, but talking to people in the industry and talking to even some former coworkers, I've seen a lot of people that came to this conclusion. So this person said clients are either massive idiots or minded to work with us due to, okay, now that may be a little dramatic. They're not all like that. And so are most IT administrators. Many behave like all knowing. Well, they, man, this guy's having a rough day. In the end, it's just like a call center with extra steps, like by going to a client to fix cables and knowing pointless common knowledge like OSI levels. I don't know if I mean, I'm a networking guy, but I don't think OSI levels is pointless. It's a
No.
reference standard. Can't use anything different because the top ladder has made deals to just a borderline rant. I regret to not have picked up programming. I do sometimes wonder what my career in dev would have been. I almost did that, so I get that. Pay was the same, but with that job, I would have traveled 2 hour daily. While with this, I literally had the job under my. Okay. I think we can just kind of skip over part of the rant of this.
Yeah, I think if he, I mean, knowing OSI levels, this sounds like a layer 8 issue to me, honestly.
Nice,
Oh
nice.
yeah, Dean beat me to
Oh,
it.
Dean, nice.
There it is.
So
So you're
yeah,
you're
go.
not in the
You can go
say
first.
you're not in the MSP world anymore, and you kind of alluded to that, from the stress that brought you into it. So, how do we want to work this? Because I have a love letter to MSP life. Do you want to tell us your thoughts on the MSP? I mean, but even though you're a vendor, you're still in the MSP community, right? So, I think let me pass this to you before I gush about how much I love the MSP world, and get your thoughts on it as far as why you left the MSP, and why you still want to be in the MSP world.
So it's really interesting. I've intentionally never really dropped my MSP persona. I kind of still think I am one when I'm talking to people. And I love the pace of MSPs, the different challenges that come up, all the different environments, meeting new people. My departure from that world was largely, partially burnout, partially a case of an opportunity came up and like, look, if I'm ever going to make the jump, this is the time to do it. So I get that aspect of it too. Reading this, I get the impression that this person is at a very immature MSP. That's what I'm taking out of this. To me, this isn't an accurate reflection of what MSP or any kind of consulting work, whether it's in the tech industry or not, has to be like. It's a reflection of someone who's working someplace that really cares about only billable hours and nothing else, is what I'm taking out of this. Um, Now, there are also some good things here. For example, you can't use anything different. Yes, that's intentional. You should be standardized across your client base. Um, but I get that. I, for a long time, was one of those engineers that had bespoke clients with very specific setups because I wanted the exact right thing for them before I really realized the type of damage that that does. And I had to go back and standardize everything. So I think it's two things. It's someone new to the industry, and it's maybe an MSP that's new to the MSP industry that just doesn't really get what a mature organization looks like yet. That's my thought. This is someone who doesn't necessarily hate MSPs and isn't necessarily a bad fit for MSPs, but probably is a bad fit for the one he's at now.
Yeah, and to his point, it's a glorified call center. It's not. I have worked in a call center for 2 years, and I was a call center manager. It's absolutely not the same thing. And it might feel like it because people are calling into you and you're doing troubleshooting mostly over the phone, but it's the same kind of people that are, the same clients, and that you're building relationships, right? MSPs are fantastic for a starting point for most people. And I think if you are the type of person who likes a fast-paced environment, something new every day, getting to see all the different technology and meeting all these different clients out there, you'll stick with it. That's where, like, if you're starting off, where do you start? Right, you could go to a help desk. um you could and then you're learning, like, let's say help desk for a hospital, right? That's a very common first step. Healthcare, there's a
Mhm.
lot of those jobs. Well, you're learning the one environment, versus if you start as a level one tech in an MSP, you're learning hundreds of different environments. Now, ultimately, it's all Microsoft, it's still Google, it's all the same, but there's something different, intricately different at each client. And yeah, some of them are idiots, some of them are bad clients, but most of them aren't. And I personally, I really like relationship building. I love getting to meet our clients, and I love helping people, and I also love technology. I mean, if I go back and look at my work history, let's start back. I was a call center manager, and then I worked for health insurance for a little bit, and then I worked at a gas station, and then I did direct support for developmentally disabled individuals. I delivered pizza, delivered papers, started an MSP,
Yeah.
became a restaurant, did restaurant management, got back to another MSP, and now I'm at my, a third MSP, right? So it's all over the place. But ultimately, what I like doing, if we sum all of that thing, everything down, all of my work environment, is I like meeting people, I like helping people, building relationships, and I like technology. And there's no other job that I can do everything that I enjoy doing that isn't an MSP. Every day I get to enjoy, like, I get to do something new, I get to do what I enjoy. And I love MSPs for that, right? So maybe I'm just the perfect fit for it.
I think you are.
uh, but
So
it's just
here's the question then. Do this person we think is just at a new or immature, I don't want to use the word bad, I'll say an immature MSP, is are other industries like this? If you're at, like, do you feel the same way if you're at an immature restaurant as opposed to a well-run
oh man,
operation?
it's so hard to turn that off, man. Like, we were just dining. I was just out to eat with my family a couple days ago at a newer restaurant, and it's so hard to be like we're sitting there waiting, and obviously, like, they weren't short staffed, but they were just working so inefficiently. And I wanted to just be like, okay, like, you need to go to the station, you need to do this, like instead of doing what they're doing. And yeah, it's really hard to shut it off. So yes, it happens in other industries, and I'm thinking trades too. If we look at, like maybe plumbing, for example, you guys talked about plumbers in the last episode of Community Live. I guarantee that there's plumbing shops that are different, maturity levels. We talk a lot about in cybersecurity, how mature are you, but there's another level of maturity. It's your operational maturity, and that goes for not just MSPs, but for every client. What operational level of maturity are they at? So my exact advice to this person is, okay, you're already just starting off, and you might be at an immature MSP. There's still things to learn from that, and maybe what you're learning is what not to do, right? But there's still things to learn from it. There's still things that you can do to personally grow yourself, whether it be, hey, this is broken, I think we need to fix it. And if they have no interest in fixing it, then continue to get the experience to learn and grow and find another MSP that would be more mature and that would be a better fit. But yeah, I mean, don't the
I think
grass is
you nailed it
greener.
right there.
The grass is greener where you water it, right? It's okay to be frustrated, and I get that, especially if you think that you're more mature than the organization you're in. But try to do everything in your power to learn, to grow, and ultimately, sometimes the answer is find a better one.
Yeah, I would caution against writing off the entire industry based on what you're seeing in this one organization. Now, it may turn out that the industry isn't for this person after all, but what we're reading, or at least what I'm reading in the comments here, suggests that this is an organization that may not be the right place for someone starting out in the industry. It's someone that it's an org that needs experienced people to come in and help show them the way, not vice versa.
Yeah, and some people, the MSP industry isn't for everybody. Like I've had peers that left the MSP industry that they just say, "Hey, I want to be the expert in knowing one environment very well. Like I don't want to be the jack of all trades. I want to specialize." Or they, may want to do more coding or something like that. This particular one, it looks like the OP did reply saying that where he's at, there's no automation. The support is very repetitive, done through TeamViewer. Um, uh, Oof. um, so that could be a flag there. If something breaks, you don't fix it. You're just the middleman between the official support and the client, where the client could just contact the support. That I have a little bit of pushback on. I mean, that's kind of why they're hiring you, right? So the client
Yeah.
doesn't have to be the person on the support, and you might understand it a little bit better yet. He was hired as an apprentice, yet there's nothing to learn. I'm the only one who can code. The top ladder doesn't understand anything, yet behaves like all knowing. um,
It
yeah,
could be a big
there's
opportunity. Maybe
yeah,
this person wants to get, so there's no automation, there's not a lot of process. If this person is interested and the org is willing to let him or her, we don't know, um, what a great chance to basically start greenfield on automation or just getting this place in order and be the change.
and the biggest red flag for me too, not to call it OP, but I kind of am like, if you're the person who says I know everything and this whole place is crap, like if you're saying there's nothing to learn, there's always something to learn, right? And I've been in situations where it hasn't been a good environment or anything like that, but you have to learn how to collaborate to figure out and to try it. And like you said, like okay, cool, like they're not doing automation. Well, build it out, show them what
Yeah.
automation can do. Pretend that they like you have to sell it to a C level, right? That's only going to help your career. And if you don't sell it to them, then cool, you've developed something that you can take to the next place that you go. So, bottom line, MSP is not a bullshit job. It is my favorite job, and I love it here. So, there might be bad ones, but don't write off the industry.
No, love it. Let's end it on that.
All right, we got the next one here. This is do but don't delve into tech. Ooh, I like this one. How do you approach customers who want an explanation of a technical problem but can't do anything with it and probably don't understand it? Sometimes there's problems, sometimes these have a technical cause, and some of your customers are going to want to know more. So, this person, OP, thinks that one or two things is going to happen. You explain the technical story, the customer gets confused and frustrated, and the customer says, "Hey, this sounds complicated. They must know what they're doing." All right. Or if you don't say it technically, then the customer gets confused and frustrated, and they automatically assume that the problem is related. So how do you solve this?
So I accidentally read the comments, but I agree with the top comment big time. And this is a judgment call. Like read the room. And what I mean by that is it takes some experience to differentiate between someone who's asking this because they're genuinely interested in the tech. And when that happens, I'll talk to them all day long and give them the longest explanation. Like we'll go on the whiteboard if they want to know how stuff works. Um, but after a while, you start to be able to tell when someone is asking just to try and poke holes into it. And that's when you bring out the analogies. That's when you get into the, yeah, you intentionally hand wave it away. You don't go into a deep explanation because there's no benefit to you or them for doing so. And sometimes you just have to not go into, even when they ask you to, if you know you're only getting asked to get it thrown back at you, then it takes some skill to do that and to explain it in such a way that you're not giving the client ammo against you. I know I'm kind of hand waving this away a little bit, but this is the type of soft skill that really comes after being around for a while. It's not the kind of thing that you're likely to get right in the beginning. And so the way to learn this is either through trial error experience or spending time around the more senior people in your org who have already gone down this road.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that point because that was what I was going to say. Is this is such a fantastic skill to develop, and I know I've talked about it before. we're a service provider, a service industry. I can teach people what buttons to push on a keyboard, but I can't, the soft skills can't be teach to an extent, right? Something you have to learn and develop. And if somebody has those skills, we call them, I think what's the term? Is it unicorn? You have somebody who can be deeply technical, but at the same time has really good soft skills and relate. And it's such a good skill to have because to your point exactly, read your audience. So like you have to explain things differently to an end user, to a tech person, to a C level. All three of those people require, you could tell them you could explain the same issue to them, but all three of them need to explain in a different way. And even taking that further, some of those people might be have a more deep technical understanding. Some people are just, hey, I'm just the numbers guy, right? Just give me the story and tell me
Yeah.
how this affects the numbers. And you have to know how to tell the story in the correct way. And again, having the person who can get the deeply technical and the person who can just give the big picture and knowing when the right time to do it is such a valuable thing to have. And that's why you see some places have like the sales engineer position or the account manager or something like that, because then they kind of divide that ability up into two different people, so that way you're covering both sides of it. uh but yeah, there's
You ever find any way to explain that to someone? I haven't. The only way I've ever instilled that in anyone was frustratingly for me and probably for them to say, come on some meetings with me or come on some like calls with me. And like that was the only way I ever taught it to anyone. I didn't teach it per se, more observe.
Yeah, and for me, like one thing that helped me is like I'm not gonna beat around the bush. Like I will literally ask the client like how would you like how do you want me to explain this? Like I can go into technical detail.
Mhm.
We can cover the Hyatt road. Sometimes you just have to go with that. And I think building that relationship with the client will make that easier. You kind of have an understanding. With the security meetings that I have with some of our clients, I have some that are extremely interest in it, and we talk about like ransomware gangs and what they're doing and like very deep technical level things. And then the other some of the other ones are literally just I just want to know what this is costing and what the business risk is to not doing it. So again, you have to build that relationship. But yeah, I think there's not like a there's not a way to really teach or learn this. You kind of have to get the experience and do it. So
Yeah.
the more you do it and the more you mess up and then the more you learn from that, or even just hearing it, seeing it firsthand. I know my again bringing back my previous MSP, one of my coworkers is very like extremely technical, especially on the wireless networking side. He knows everything there is to know about Wi-Fi and things like that. And I did, I studied, got my CWNA, learned some more about the wireless, and the more I learned about Wi-Fi, the more I realized it's all just black magic. Like, that's just how it works. But he's able to get into the super technical, and we're doing these wireless installations for schools and things like that. And these problems arise, and like, dude, he knows exactly what it is. He can tell you, MTUs and all the technical side of things, but you can tell on these tech coordinators that it just gets lost, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, well, we got to explain this a little bit differently, in a way that they understand. And honestly, I start with that. I'm like, all right, like I'm gonna be honest with you, this Wi-Fi is black magic, but we're gonna try to tame it the best we can.
No,
So,
that's a good point.
uh,
You and I both just talked about, hey, follow us or come to a meeting with us. But certainly for me, and I assume for you too, um, in the beginning, that wouldn't have been a very good idea because I had no idea what I was doing when I first started out in this industry as far as how to make that judgment of how to talk to clients. It really took some practice. And to your point, it took getting it wrong a few times too before it started to really click and sink in. I think it's one of those things you just have to go through the reps on.
yep. So maybe that can be another thing that we do for learning is we'll set up some simulations in the Discord where it's like, hey, explain this problem to me and do some role playing. We'll build the community up.
Ooh, that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Hey,
All right.
I think we're done with this, and I will go quick on this one because this episode is moving very fast, which is good. Difficult to onboarding new hires for team integration. I'm just going to skim this. I believe the issue here is that they have new hires and they're coming into some of that chaos, that storm that you mentioned and talked about, in that there's different stuff all over the place. They're trying to figure out the intricacies of different clients and various things. To me, this almost sounds like I'm bringing in someone from outside of the MSP industry, and I have to somehow get them accustomed to the pace, the constant context switches, all of the stuff that happens in our world. And how do you make somebody useful is not really the right term, but maybe productive early? How do you go about that when somebody new starts on your team?
So in looking at it, yeah, to your point, like everything's a little different. So start with the basics of it. Is regardless if it's different, you can at least make yourself useful by unboxing this, setting it up, installing all the updates, or following whatever the automated process is, right? So focusing on, hey, what do you know how to do, and let's do that. Um, Even if I don't know the ins and outs of everything, what I do know is I know how to. I'm going to take it back earlier into my MSP career when I was first learning servers. I didn't know much about servers, but how I can make myself useful is I can unbox them, I can put them together, I can at least install Windows Server at the time would have been 2008, 2012, right? I can get to that point,
Josh
and
is also
then
old, by the way.
yeah, been around. But yeah, I can at least get it to that point, and then hand it off to the person who's more experienced, and then shadow them while they do the put the AD, look at the FISMA roles, all whatever all the fancy stuff is that needs to get done with it. In this particular situation, I think you do the same thing, and they do say, "Hey, we have documentation and credentials for all client networks," but they're saying it's not sufficient. So I'm going to push back and say your documentation isn't sufficient,
Yeah,
because our the MSP I'm currently at, and we're not perfect, but I think we're a pretty mature organization. We have specific KBs for each client to take care of these nuances. So we have a repeatable provisioning process, and then we have what we call a VITEM, a virtual IT manager, who's basically the knows the kind of the ins and outs and works proactively for each client, and they're kind of in charge of making those KBs for that specific client. So we have the nuances. So we say, hey, if you're doing an onboarding, here's your standard onboarding provisioning checklist, and then here's the KB for this particular client that states these are the things that you need for them. So it sounds like they're almost there. They're getting there, but they need to spend a little more time on the documentation, which is never fun, but you need to do it.
I when somebody asks why do we need to standardize across clients, just point them to this thread. Like, this is exactly what everyone is talking about when, why don't we use the very specific thing that would may be a better fit at this one client versus our standard solution? This is why.
Yep. Yeah, because the more you stay, hey, this is the EDR we use, this is the tool we use for this is the tool we use for that. Like then it just becomes more base setups.
Yeah,
It just
and
simplifies
not
it, and
just
that's
tools,
yeah, and that's where you get
configurations too.
that's where you get the scalable part. And again, as you get experience and as you grow on more of the business side of things, I think Dean has said that MSPs are just like McDonald's. You want to be able to provide the same sandwich to all of your clients, and you want to be able to do that at a very scalable, efficient level. So that's why you standardize, and that's why if you go to 10 different McDonald's, they're not selling different things. They're not, hey, this
Yeah,
one has this sandwich, this one has this chicken sandwich, but it's got jalapenos. No, it's the same damn sandwich every time, and that's how you want it to be. And now, obviously, your clients might some people, they'll go to McDonald's and they have allergens, right? So you have to adjust and do things accordingly. Your clients are going to have different needs, but for the most part, you need to come up with the most standard that you can across all of your clients to make it scalable.
You nailed it. And for me, at least as a tech, this was a tough thing to get my head around. It took a couple of years seeing why all the uniqueness that had blown up around clients was a problem. I mean, after a while, you had Mac clients that were all different, and a guy named Mike, his clients were all different, and that was not good. It took some time to undo some of that and get standardization across the org. And this is why techs, I know it's weird. The standardization is preached for a reason.
Yep. And it's always fun too, because like I've had clients at school like, well, this previous one used, let's say, just to throw out there, like, well, this client or our previous MSP used the FortiGate or the Sonic wall. Now you guys want to do this? Like, is it better? It's like, no, it's not better. It's just instead of us trying to learn all of these different ecosystems, it makes more sense to standardize on this. Like, this is just our standard stack. We it has benefits, but it might not be the best, but we've chosen as, hey, this is a good product and this is what we know. So yeah, that's the fun, and that's where it gets into what's in your stack. What are you using?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's no right or wrong answers. Find what works for you, find what you want to do, and find what is scalable for everybody. And you're always going to have those one-offs, right? Then that's why you kind of have to have that extra documentation or the extra level of know-how to know how to deal with those each individual fun problems that come up.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, we are basically out of time, so we'll get this wrapped up. First, thank you to everyone who commented and tuned in. We appreciate anyone who's involved in improving the industry. Josh, anything you want to mention coming up for next week, or anything that you would like to plug or make sure everyone knows about?
Yeah, the only thing I think, I don't think it's next week, but I believe on the 13th is the next the next iteration of the Diamond Dogs peer group on the MMN Discord. So come on there and let's hang out, get to know each other a little better. I believe MSP GeekCon is coming up. I unfortunately won't be able to make that, but I know you're speaking at that, so I will pass that off to you to go ahead and plug that.
So I'll plug both. MSP GeekCon, which is just a very unique conference in the industry. I've said to many people it's a different kind of vibe than any other event I've ever been to. So I very much enjoyed going to it last year. I'll be speaking this year. And then after that, maybe a week or two later, is IT Nation Secure. And that is our security first conference, not just all about ConnectWise products, but about things happening in the industry that are related to cybersecurity. I'll be speaking at that as well. Looking forward to seeing everyone at one or both of those. And with that, I'll say thank you to Josh for coming on and covering, and we'll see everyone next week.
This has been a broadcast of the MSP Media Network.